Hello, all. Welcome to another endgame study of the Solving Harder Studies to Improve Chess Calculation series. This is from Richard Réti. I think everyone knows Richard Réti. Besides being a very strong player, he was also a very rich theoretician and chess composer. This position is right to play and to win. As always, if you haven't, I suggest you watch the guide. If you are already prepared for the practice, then you already know the countdown of 10 minutes will start, and then I'll catch you up to start the guided solution with you. And there we are. Okay, let's look at this position. So white has an extra pawn. That's easy to see. And of course, black pawn is not that dangerous because the king is too close to call it a danger. So things like, for example, advancing the pawn are the first ones that come to mind. But we can see very easily that this doesn't work because if we are counting on advancing the pawn, then the king approaches and I can protect it from behind, so the pawn is safe, so I can maneuver the king taking the other pawn and then helping advance, and if the bishop sacrifice I take it and then I win because the knight is always protecting the pawn and the king can't approach because otherwise the pawn runs away. I am going to miss the full opportunities from black because in this position where we advance the pawn, black is just going to play the simple bishop f8 controlling diagonal, and so not allowing the knight to go to the defensive square of the pawn. Which happens after is maybe the king takes the pawn and the other king is going to grab our own pawn. So over here, it's impossible to win with the bishop against the pawn. The bishop just needs to sacrifice. The black king will come to help. And so it's not possible to force a win with a knight and a pawn against the bishop. This is a draw. So on the first move, we think, okay, we can't advance the pawn, so let's swap. Let's start with the knight. Let's go with knight b4. So with the same idea. So the king comes, so now I advance the pawn and I get the same position. Of course, the pawn is now threatening to get away. Notice that the king is outside of the square of the pawn. So the expected move is very easy to see also. King b6. Now we take the pawn. It's black to play again, and of course, maybe black attacks the knight. So let's say black goes with the bishop d2. The knight may check our king to avoid being lost, but the king takes the pawn and we get the same position. We get bishop against a knight and a pawn, so our king can come to the rescue, the black king, of course, and we are not going to be able to force this one. And so it's a draw. So from the starting position, things are already not very easy because the obvious options don't work. So the only move possible over here is to go with the knight d4 check, which is a very clever idea because we are taking advantage of the king not being able to approach the pawn immediately. And after some counting, we see that, okay, we can win because the king goes to b7, so it's controlling my a pawn. Now I can take the h2 pawn. It's black to play. Let's say black comes to attack our pawn, so I am forced to use my knight to protect it. It's black to play again. Maybe black will try to activate the bishop, so check. I go to h3. The idea is to go to g4 next and then force the advancing of the f pawn. Maybe black now brings the king to control to attack our knight because the bishop is already ready to go to the defense. Let's say white attacks the bishop, so the bishop is going to b8, and now of course white's plays f4, and now it's just counting moves. Let's say the king attacks our knight, we advance the f pawn again, so sacrifice the knight. The king takes our knight. Now we advance the f pawn again. Let's say the king attacks our a pawn. Now we need to just threat to promote our f pawn, so the bishop needs to control the promotion. And now because the king is far away from the square of our a pawn, we are in time to force the bishop to come to the rescue. And as you can see over here, the bishop can't deal with both. So we just advance one, sacrificing, and then we get the other one with the queen, and from here it's a win. So maybe we are happy from here. But there's a better move for black. And black plays the very interesting, brilliant one, brilliant counter move, king c5. It's a brilliant one. And this is a moment for us to stop. It's a 1 minute countdown, and then I'll come back to finish the solution. And here we are. Let's say what are the options from white over here, because let's go with everyone. Okay, so advancing the pawn doesn't work because the king just goes near. There's impossible way to protect it, so it's over. So advancing the a pawn is not possible. Let's say, for example, we now move the knight to b3 with check. Well, the king just goes to the side. Of course, we can't lose control of the pawn. Now we take the h2 pawn. Black, of course, will check our king. The king goes to h3. Now we are going to b8. This is going to be similar to what we saw when the black king went to b7. But now the king is one move away from supporting the pawns. Let's see. The black king attacks our knight. We go with f4 like we saw. The king takes the knight. Now the pawn advances to f5. But from here, it's not going to be possible anymore to win, because now we advance the a pawn, of course, otherwise we lost it. We attack it again, and now what can we do? We advance, the bishop takes, and the other one is controlled very easily by the bishop. So as you can see over here, going with the knight b3 is not working anymore because the king is not so far away. So it's closer to, sorry, it's closer now, it's right, it's closer to come to the position, so winning one very critical tempo to draw this one. And so what other options we have here? Let's say, for example, then we take the pawn, but of course black has other options. It is to bring the bishop, and the bishop controls the promotion of the pawn. So we in the end we see that after all the king could take the knight and keep the draw over here. uh, what else from here? So, and finally, not a big deal, but let's say we move the f pawn, of course not to f4, because that would just speed things up for black. Well, black just can, of course, attack the pawn. Notice that over here, not this one. This would be a big blunder for black, of course, but it can attack our knight. Now the knight needs to go away, and now we get more or less the same idea. The pawns are controlled. Notice that now it can take, and now it can bring the bishop and control the advancing of the pawn. So in the end, we need to see what's going on, what is the move, and the correct move is king h1. Brilliant move. Why? Because suddenly we see that if it was black to move, whatever move the bishop or the king would do would be a loss. So we just need to find what is the right move from white that forces black to play. And correct move is not accepting the pawn, but placing yourself in front of the pawn, so removing the option to sacrifice the pawn. And now, whatever move black does, it's lost. Let's say the bishop comes to g7 or f8, we are going to fork it with our knight, so winning the bishop. So over here we win the bishop, then we always keep one pawn and the other is controlled. And the same goes if the bishop comes to the other sides. If the bishop goes to g5 or f4, it's the same idea. We get the fork from the knight grabbing the bishop, and so the win. The same goes if the bishop comes down here to d2 or c1, again another fork. So as you can see, any move from the bishop will end up in a fork. Of course, if the king takes the knight, then now our pawn runs away very easily, so it's impossible to grab the pawn again. Notice that the bishop doesn't has access to it, so whatever move here we play, we are going to see the pawn promoted to a queen. What else? Another very interesting moves. That's, for example, if the king moves to d6, then there's another fork, so fork all around. What else? What else? What else? Okay, if it goes here, it's the same idea. So in the end, we just went with the second move. The first one was the knight, the second one, and we got this very short study, this very interesting short study that in two moves it's so rich. I hope you have enjoyed. I for sure have enjoyed it a lot. And as always, I catch you up in future studies. Bye bye.